The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Good morning and welcome to Community Talk Radio. This is Project Independence and You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host and producer, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host today, Otto Lowe's. It's just me and Otto today. We don't have Paula with us because it is her birthday, so we will give her a special. We'll let her off. We will not reveal her age, but I hope she's enjoying her day off in the sunshine today. This morning, though, we are talking to Mike Voltz, who is the Director of Energy Efficiency over at PSEG Long Island, all about energy efficiency tips. It is, if you were listening to us live, it's quite warm today. Yeah. So I think, everyone's probably starting to think about air conditioning and cooling. So thank you for joining us today, Mike Voltz.
Happy to be here.
Very appropriate name, too. You were meant to work for PSEG with that last name. I think it was
the only way in the door.
Calling, yes. I think is what it was. So let's jump in. Give us a little blurb about just what energy efficiency is, what different things are involved. We'll just dive into all those kind of things.
Sure. So energy efficiency generally is just getting more for less, so whether it's electricity or fuel oil or other kind of heating fuels, you want to get the most, useful output out of what your appliance is and the least input. So you save energy, you save money. That's the bottom line with energy efficiency is you can save money, whether it's saving on your electric bill, saving on your heating oil, your natural gas bill. So there's all sorts of different ways to save within the home and within the business. But ultimately, that's what energy efficiency is all about, is helping customers to save money.
I have a question for you. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
What led you down this path? You are a mechanical engineer.
He was born with last name.
There you go.
And my grandson is a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
And he ended up in heating and ventilation, whatever. How did you lead down this path? When you got out of school, you didn't say this is what you were going to do.
Okay, no, very similar, but mechanical engineer. The name had to draw me to it. But ultimately, I got the degree in mechanical engineering, and I interviewed for a small utility upstate called Central Hudson Gas and Electric. And when I worked at Central Hudson, I worked in power generating plants and in transmission and distribution of power, and ultimately got into energy efficiency. So, it was a degree in engineering, and then I got an advanced degree in business after that. I went for a master's degree in business administration as well. But, the energy business, the utility business, has lots of mechanical moving parts, whether it's the turbines that generate electricity. For a while, I was managing our hydroelectric power plants at my former utility, where, basically the water flows through a turbine, it makes electricity. So I have lots of background in electricity, natural gas, heating fuels.
You've been doing this for a long time.
Long time. It's been over 40 years of doing electric utility business, yeah.
So as we go along, I'd be really interested in hearing your vision of where you think it's all going to go.
Yeah, where it's going to head, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
hope to head, right?
So for the past 12 years or so, I've been at PSEG Long Island and, grew up on Long Island. I grew up in Massapequa, New York. And then, so grew up here on Long Island.
Massapequa, boy behind the
there you go.
board over there.
Yeah. So grew up in Massapequa. And then I went away to college at Rensselaer Polytechnic up in Albany, Troy, New York. And I got my mechanical engineering degree. And I worked at, as you said, a Hudson Valley utility for about 25 years. But then I came back to Long Island. My hometown was here. I wanted to be back on Long Island. And, the energy business is to me, it's an exciting business. Mm-hmm. And, moving from more of a fossil fuel central generating plants, most of the plants like up in Northport and Port Jefferson, they burn a fossil fuel, whether it's natural gas or whether it's fuel oil. They burn a fuel, they make steam, and the steam flows through a turbine and it produces electric power at a very high voltage. The high voltage power is then transmitted over transmission and distribution lines and ultimately step down to a usable voltage for your home. But more and more, we're moving toward a distributed energy resources. So rather than have only centralized power plants, they're still very important. But now we have a lot of distributed resources like solar and wind power and, solar on your roof. I actually have solar on my roof at my home now. So it's becoming more of a renewable energy. We still, as I said, we still need the baseload power plants to be able to produce the large quantities of energy. But more and more individual customers are taking, the generating of power for their own home. And it's very clean. It's very efficient. So with solar and wind, you don't use any fossil fuel. You don't produce any greenhouse gases because you're not burning any fuel. So it's an important supplemental resource. You still kind of need your base load resources to make sure the reliability of the grid stays stable. But clean energy is really the way of the future. And then ultimately, the use of energy, which we're going to talk a lot about on today's show.
Do
the
you
use
think
of energy.
solar is the number one future direction?
Yeah, I would say it probably is because the sun, it doesn't always shine. Sun shines. The only drawback, well, the primary drawback to solar is it's not sunny all the time. You have cloud cover and you have nighttime. So when you put solar on the roof of your home, you get about 15% of the hours in the year, the 15% of the potential that you get. But then again, you get it for free, essentially. There's no fuel. So it's really, to me, it's a combination of using solar as much as you can because it's a great resource and it's clean and it's renewable and it lasts a long time.
When it comes to solar, what would you say is the average estimated cost for somebody to put solar on their roof? Ballpark, I realize.
Yeah, it's a pretty big number, but there's also a lot of tax credits. And, the federal government is currently considering removing those tax credits, but at least for 2025, for right now, there's a 30% investment tax credit, which means for every dollar that you spend on solar in your home, you get 30% of it back on your tax return.
Right.
And then there's another $5,000 from the state of New York. So to your question about the average, I would say it's probably going to be in the $20,000 to $25,000 range up front, but then that's pre-tax. But then you get 30% of that as a discount from the federal government and $5,000 from the state. So a $25,000 system is probably going to cost more like 15 to 20, after you take all the tax credits. And then the savings, will pay for itself in your reduced electric bills over about 7 to 8 years, probably.
That's
would be
the
typical.
problem that people like myself
Yeah.
face.
The initial.
Yeah, the age and the longevity of the
17
home.
years is going to put me
Right.
up there pretty good.
Yeah,
big,
not 17.
triple digit
Seven,
number.
not 17, 7 years. But yeah, it's true. You want to make sure if you're going to put solar on your home that you're going to be in the home for at least 10
So a
years or so.
17-year payback.
No, seven.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. So I put
7.
I put solar on my home 3 years ago, and I looked at it, and it was about a 7-year payback. And I said, you know what, I'm going to be in the home for probably 20 more years. And after 7, you've paid for your investment. And then every year I'm saving $2,000 to $3,000 on my electric bill.
Now, I kid about this a lot of times, all right? I'll say that I'm waiting for the super solar sucker to come along so you can have...
Is that the actual official name? Is that
So-
the official name?
So you have a
Super
thing
solar
this
sucker?
big
Right.
that's going to suck up all the sun
Right.
and take care of giving you
Right.
Do you visualize that type of thing happening down the road where you won't have to put all
giant
these things
panels.
on
Right.
your roof?
Not as small as a cell phone because there's a theoretical limit to the efficiency of silicon solar cells.
Right.
The theoretical limit right now, we're getting about 15 to 20% of the theoretical energy that comes from the photons of sun in the panel. So to use round numbers, if you're getting 20% now and you got 100%, you could be 5 times smaller. But 5 times smaller than a solar panel is not as small
Right,
as a cell phone.
right,
So
right.
I do think, though, there's continuing improvement. The solar panels that I put on my roof produce about 420 watts. And 10 years ago, those same size panels were only producing about 250 watts. So I've gotten from 250 watts to over 400 watts from the same space in the panel. So the efficiency is improving, but probably not to the point you're describing.
Does PSE&G, like, I know we're going to get into like assessments kind of thing, but would they get involved with assessments in terms of what you might need as far as solar goes?
That's a good place to start. So, like, if you're interested
Right.
in energy efficiency, like, where do you even begin?
Yeah,
The
sure.
process.
So probably the first thing to do, if you just want to look at, at my home, maybe you moved into a home recently, maybe it's an older home that, is drafty in the wintertime, you're not comfortable, whatever the reason, any one of our customers on Long Island can get a free home energy assessment. So there's no charge. You can call our 800 number. It's 1-800-692-2626. And you can just say, I live in this home. You give them the account number if possible. If you don't have the account number, you can give a name and address. We can probably look it up. But we can schedule it. It's a free service. It takes about 2 hours or so. The energy expert will go into the home. They'll walk through your home with you, and they'll look at your heating system. They'll look at your appliances, the insulation in the attic, the insulation in the walls, crawl spaces, wherever. And they'll look at, windows and doors to see if they're sealed properly, and basically looking for leaks. They even do what's known as a blower door test. A blower door test basically puts a big fan in your front door, big, large 36-inch fan. and they suck air out of your home and create a vacuum, with your permission. And you can feel when you create a vacuum in your home, you can go around, you can feel around the windows, you can feel cool air if it's in the winter and warm air in the summer being pulled in. And the areas where you feel the air coming, and they use a little smoke pencil even to see where the drafts are. It's an optional service, but some homeowners don't want to necessarily do that. But it's a great way to identify where there may be leaks around windows, doors, skylights, wherever.
When they do that, do they like the result would be, do I get like a written recap that says these are the things that would be good for you to do?
Yeah, it's typically not a detailed report, but it's not like when you purchase a home and you have an assessment of its condition. It's not as detailed as that. But I think we do typically send out an email to the homeowner
Like
with
a
some
checklist kind of
yeah, some ideas. You can insulate the attic. The other thing we do is we give you mentioned how do you find out or about whether solar is right. We give you a list of contractors that are in the area that are in the field. So whether it's insulating contractors, HVAC contractors, solar contractors, we have, and they're on our website as well. But we can give the homeowner a brief report, as you mentioned, about just what to look for and what ideas you can save, and a list of contractors that are skilled in those trades that can do the work, whether it's insulating or putting in a new water heater or a new heating system. So once you have that list of ideas, along with a list of contractors, to get to the actual cost estimate of what it would cost to insulate my attic or put in a new water heater, the contractors can give you estimates. And we typically recommend getting 3 estimates just to get multiple estimates.
Right.
And then we have incentives following the home energy assessment and the list of contractors. We have incentives that follow, depending on your income level. You can get up to $6,000 to $7,000 of incentives from us to pay for the insulation or the heating system.
Now, at what point do you find out about the incentives? Is that also like the initial assessment? They'll say, there are certain, if you go ahead with this, like,
Yeah.
does the homeowner
There's a couple different ways. They're listed on our website. If you go to PSEG LI.com and you look for Save Energy and Money, I think it's called Save Energy and Money or Energy Saving Opportunities, you'll find a list of the incentives. So, for example, you put in a heat pump, you can get $1,000 per ton. If you're a income eligible, which is below 60% of the state median income, for folks that are struggling and they don't have the financial wherewithal necessarily to pay for a new heating system, in those cases we offer up to $11,000 for a new whole house heat pump system. So they're all listed on the website. But also, when you get the estimate from the contractors that we provide, the names and phone numbers of the contractors, they're all very familiar with the program.
Okay, that's
so they'll say to you, you can insulate your attic for X dollars, but Y dollars are going to be paid for by PSEG Long Island to help support the
So
investment.
basically, this sounds like a nice idea, to be honest about it.
Yeah.
You have
Do it.
you have a checklist,
Right.
which is provided because somebody knows what they're talking
Right.
about.
They know what to look for.
Right. And then you sort of pick off that menu if you choose to take what, would they tell you like what the major issues might be?
Yeah, they would typically point out, when they do the home assessment along with the blower door test, they might say, well, the first thing you should do is seal around the window in the dining room because, it needs weather stripping or caulking around the
Been
window.
in my
right?
house?
As an example. There you go.
I was like, I felt
Yeah. Or they may say, you've only got 3 inches of insulation in your attic. You really want to upgrade
Maybe
to
less.
12 inches, Yeah. So that's the kind of recommendations they'll give to the homeowner. They'll do it verbally, they'll consult with you and recommend things, but then they'll give you a little written report that just says, you ought to have more attic insulation. And here's a list of contractors that can give you a quote as to what it would cost to insulate your attic, for example.
Go
Well,
ahead.
it's what I was just thinking, is, obviously there's certain houses have, there's a, giant energy drainage or whatever.
Right.
But, I think also like, I like the idea of the checklist thing, like, weatherization around the window, because it's like what you were saying, like maybe, listen, I can't like afford, but like I'm a firm believer in like these little kind of things.
Simple,
Also,
local, yeah,
we've all certainly been by the window that you feel,
you feel a
the
draft.
coming in.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's nice to have on a list.
Well, I mean, I could visualize like insulation or windows becoming a major construction job.
Yes. New windows is a big expense,
yeah.
insulating
And
around.
insulation,
Yeah.
frankly, if you have an older house,
Right.
you have to be able to get into the walls. So you
Yeah.
obviously have to make a couple of holes somewhere.
Yes.
So
Sometimes
once
I
you
use,
make a couple of holes now. This spot has to be painted.
yeah,
You might as well paint the rest of it.
right.
So it could become,
Just in a full
I mean, but the point of the checklist is you
choose.
at
Yeah, you
least
can
say,
choose simple
okay,
things.
I can judge and I can evaluate.
Right.
Is this
What,
going to be worth it? And where is it going? And
right.
frankly, maybe your house needed to be painted in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing sometimes
Yeah.
in difficult to reach areas, some of the contractors will use blown in cellulose, so they don't have to get in the space. They'll blow it in through the walls of the attic and fill the space with cellulose, which is an insulating material that helps prevent loss of heat in the winter. And the other thing, it'll prevent or reduce the gain of heat in the summer. So on a hot day like today, insulation also helps in the summer because you don't have to air conditioning as much if you have good insulation in your home.
Yeah. Yeah. Otto's taking a lot of personal advice, I'm thinking. I think
Well,
I think that was going to be my first customer.
I mean, it's a no cost. You really have very little, if nothing, to lose.
Yeah, 2 hours of your time
Yeah, you
to
do nothing and you find out, okay.
Right.
You probably knew some of these things.
yeah,
I know the front of my house, frankly. I'm opposite of high school. The wind comes roaring in.
yeah,
I do what I can, but
yeah.
do I want to spend whatever dollars?
And that's the thing. The contractors give you an estimate. You're not required to do it. It's an estimate. And if you get multiple bids, and then also they'll tell you about the incentives that are available. So again, depending on the income level, if you're a middle or upper income customer, we give about $1,000 to do installation follow-on work. We call it follow-on work. So you do the energy assessment, and then the follow-on work is whether you want to do the installation or the new water heater or the new heating system, right? That's follow-on work. Middle income and other customers like that is about $1,000 maximum. But for lower income that are struggling under 60%, we offer up to $6,250, which might cover the entire cost of an attic insulation. So in a sense, if you're in that struggling, maybe it's a senior citizen that's living on Social Security and no other income, you could actually get your attic insulated for free, depending on the size of your home. And so it's worth considering, especially.
On that note, Mike, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought because we are taking our first break. After the break, we will continue talking with Mike Voltz, who's the Director of Energy Efficiency over at PSEG Long Island. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios podcasts, available on any podcast app. Those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Welcome back to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. I'm your host, Kristina Liu, along with my co-host today, Otto Los, and we're going to dive back in with Mike Voltz, who is the Director of Energy Efficiency at PSEG Long Island, and we're talking all things saving money. Otto's, I think, ready to book his assessment.
Yeah, you know what I like is that this checklist gives you kind of a full focus of
Right.
the picture, as opposed to maybe somebody knocking on your door saying, "Oh, I'm doing some
Hey, would you like
insulation,"
Yeah.
or "I'm doing windows."
Right.
or-
It's one very precise that they want to sell.
Yeah. So, okay, do I really want to do windows or do I want to do insulation or whatever?
Yeah. It gives you an
So it gives you kind of an
overview.
overview picture.
That's right.
Which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Mike, what do you think is one of the biggest energy wasters in a house? Like in your experience.
Yeah, so the biggest energy consumers are heating and cooling, essentially, right? In the wintertime, it's a heating system, whether it's natural gas, oil, or an electric heat pump. The biggest user in the winter is your heating system. The biggest user in the summer is your air conditioning, again, whether it's a central air conditioning or whether it's a window unit or what we call ductless mini split. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The heat pump is a device that looks exactly like a central air. If you looked at the box outside, the big square box, it looks exactly like a central air conditioner. And it is a central air conditioner in the summer. But in the winter, they just turn around the valves inside, and instead of putting cool air in your home, it puts warm air in your home. So it's a heat pump. It heats in the winter, and it cools in the summer. So a heat pump is addressing your two highest users. It's using the highest user in the winter is heating and cooling in the summer. The same device does both. So it's a highly efficient device that can save you money, particularly if you have oil heat right now. Oil,
I know.
you know,
We haven't talked oil, but every time it comes in, it's like we're
Yeah,
placing
that-
bets. Like, oh God, what's
yeah.
it gonna be?
So an electric heat pump is certainly something that customers could consider, particularly if you have central air conditioning now, and the unit is more than about 15 or 20 years old, or if it's constantly breaking down. If you put an electric heat,
You're really hitting.
yeah, I'm heading home with Otto. So I'll tell you a little bit about the advantage of a heat pump, particularly if you have oil heat and you have an old air conditioner. So you need to spend whatever thousands of dollars for a new air conditioner anyway. It's really not much more to go from a central air to a heat pump. The contractor will put in a heat pump. And then we offer rebates of $1,000 per ton, regardless of income. And a typical home has 4 tons of heating and cooling. So that's a $4,000 rebate. So even if you had, I know someone recently that just got a quote. Actually, it's being installed this week. Well, today's Friday. Maybe it was done. He got a quote. It was $15,000 to put a new heat pump system in his home. Has oil heat, exactly like I was describing. Now that $15,000 is only $11,000 because we get $4,000 back, and you're probably going to spend the $11,000 anyway for central air. Once you then have that heat pump in the wintertime, it's less expensive to operate than it would to burn an oil furnace. And we also at PSEG Long Island have a discount rate for anyone that has a central heat pump for the whole house. It gives a 20% discount on your electric rate from the months of October to May. So the entire winter season, you're getting a discount on your electric rate. You're getting your heating and your cooling from the same appliance. So a lot of advantages to it.
Quick questions
Yeah.
here. First of all, with the central air, if you have central air, does the same ductwork
Yes.
system still get used?
Same ductwork.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just add to that. With air conditioning, it's ideal to have ductwork in the ceiling because cool air sinks,
Right.
warm air rises. So you can use the same ductwork, but typically what contractors will do, they'll use the same ones that are in the ceiling, but they might add 1 or 2 in the floor just to get some of the heat coming up from the floor. But it's most of the ductwork is reused.
And how does one go about getting an evaluation? Like this sounds to me like if you call companies who sell these things, that's
Yes.
what they
They sell
do.
it, right.
Yes.
They sell them.
Yeah, they want to sell you a heat pump.
Right.
Yes.
So how does one go about getting an evaluation where you don't think you're being sold?
Right. So we have a list of contractors on our website. They are contractors that are trying to sell something, but they're also trained and experienced with our PSEG Long Island efficiency programs. We call them Home Comfort Partners, and the Home Comfort is the name of our program that basically promotes the electric heat pump. These Home Comfort Partners are experienced contractors. They're reputable. We wouldn't put them on our website unless they've done a number of jobs that have been successful and satisfied customers. We then put them as a partner of ours. And if you get at least 3 quotes, you won't feel, at least I believe, you won't feel like you're being taken advantage of because 3 different companies, one maybe is a little more expensive than the other. Maybe one says you need to add a duct over here to get the heat in the right. The other contractor might say you don't need it. But that would be my advice. You go to our website, PSEGLINY.com, and you look up under heating and cooling, I think it is, and it'll show you our Home Comfort Partners. And they're listed by zip code, by town. You can put in fact, I just did it this morning. I put in my zip code, and about 12 names came up that were within 10 miles. So yeah, you can do it by zip code and see which contractors might be near, and they'll know about the rebate of $1,000 a ton.
That same thing would hold true for windows then?
Windows, we don't really promote aggressively in our program.
Okay.
What I'll say about Windows, it is a good idea if you have old single pane windows, and it does save some energy, but the relative amount of energy you save from new windows relative to what they cost, you wouldn't usually replace windows just to save energy.
Right.
You'll do it for comfort, you'll do it for appearance, other reasons.
Okay.
And we don't offer rebates on windows right now, but so we don't have a list of contractors that do windows. But we do have the Home Comfort Partners are the ones that do heat pumps, and we do have what was called Home Performance Contractors, which are the ones that do insulation. So not windows necessarily, but attic insulation, wall insulation, weather stripping, sealing. They also do duct sealing. If you do have central air or a heat pump and you have ducts in your house, sometimes the ducts can form leaks and cracks at joints, so they can seal up the ductwork, which keeps the hot air or cool air, depending on the season, where you want it.
A question about ductwork. You always have people who are advertising that they can clean your ductwork out.
Yeah.
Right. Is it really mandatory or necessary?
It really isn't, and I'll just speak from personal experience because I
Yeah.
don't know that PSEG Long Island has a position either way, but I don't feel I have ductwork in my home, and I don't feel the need to have them cleaned. I mean,
That's
it's
good to
personal
hear.
choice. Yeah.
We're having a little marital debate about that.
He's like, you know what? I'm
It's-
bring Mike into
yeah.
You might have to go home with
It's,
it, Mike,
it's
and
not,
settle this.
it's not an official PSEG Long Island position,
No, I'm
but
saying we've had these ducts for 25
Yeah.
years,
yeah,
and I haven't bothered
it
me.
probably doesn't hurt to clean them, but I don't have any guidance either way.
All
Yeah.
right.
There you go.
You're on my team.
He's going home to Bunny and telling them, Mike, you
Yeah.
know, my co-son
He
know what
said.
he said.
If you have central air,
Mhm.
there's this thing about whether you should have it on automatic or open the windows, don't open the windows. Is
Yeah.
there, you have a feeling about that?
Well, again, it depends on personal preference and how comfortable you want, how cool you want your home to be. So my wife and I generally don't need it to be that cold. So the last 2 days we just had the windows open, early in the morning particularly. You open the windows in the morning, you let the cool air come in, you close them up later, and and
That's
so
another one.
we haven't turned our other people probably have the air conditioning running today because they want to be we're
One
very
of them marital things.
yeah,
also.
our family, we like to keep it at 78 degrees. Now, other people tell me keep it at 72 degrees. They want to be cold. So personal choice. But it is a good idea to pull shades down on a hot summer day, particularly on the west in the afternoon in the west or south side of your house. Pull the shades down when the sun is beating on it, and it won't absorb as much heat in the home. And then opening and closing windows is personal choice about what temperature you like it at. But if the air conditioning is running, certainly you want to have the windows closed and cool the home with the AC.
Yeah, like I've heard, you should leave it on auto because that way it keeps the humidity.
That is true too. Humidity is a big
Right.
advantage of air
Right.
conditioning versus windows open.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
have it up like 76 or whatever,
Yeah,
it's really not terrible to me.
right. I agree with you. It dehumidifies the home even if it's not cooling it as far down.
Well, and then there's an air quality thing, like driving in here today, I noticed that quality didn't look as good as normal.
Yeah, I heard there was some forest fires in Canada, and I
Yeah,
haven't seen
yeah.
the evidence, but they said that we may be getting some of the the blowover from Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
Auto. Well, and like, are there little initiatives? You always hear, for experience, you go into like a Home Depot and you'll see like just rows of light bulbs.
Yes.
So, how much difference does it make to like change over light bulbs?
That's a great
Yeah.
question. Well, actually, LED light bulbs is the first thing you should do
Mhm.
if you haven't done it already. So a 60-watt bulb, everyone that's more than 30 or 40 years old knows we used to use 60-watt light bulbs, and that's a standard bulb. A 7-watt light bulb from LED gives the same amount of light as a 60-watt, and it lasts 20 times longer. So it's a no-brainer, if you will, to replace your incandescent bulbs if you still have them. Hopefully, most people aren't using incandescent bulbs.
You
But
can't even find them. I don't
It's
think.
really, they're not even legal to sell anyway.
Right, yeah.
Is that
But
right?
yeah, you can't sell actually it's a federal standard. The federal standard a couple of years ago changed, so you can't buy an incandescent bulb anymore. But if you still have old incandescent bulbs, now one thing I'll point out, I mentioned earlier some people that are income eligible. If you're below 60% of the federal poverty level, which I can't say exactly what that number is, depends on the family size. But if you feel like you're struggling and you're on Social Security, we actually will install LED bulbs for free. And potentially even, maybe I'll describe the program.
Yeah.
It's similar to the home energy audit. We call it a residential energy affordability partnership. It's basically the same service as home
REAP,
energy.
correct?
REAP,
Yeah.
REAP. It's the same as the home energy assessment, except it goes further. If you're income eligible, we'll go around your home. Any incandescent bulbs we find, we'll change them to LED, no charge. We'll change them to LED, if you want us to. We'll potentially even give you a new refrigerator. If you have an old, inefficient refrigerator and we look at the nameplate and we say it's 20 years old, we'll even give you a new refrigerator. We'll schedule that. Same with window air conditioners. If they're more than 15 or 20 years old and they're running inefficiently, we'll provide you with new window air conditioners. So the REAP program gives the same service as an energy assessment, but it goes beyond that. And then I mentioned attic insulation before. If they identify that you need new insulation, we'll pay up to $6,500, actually $6,250, I think, but over $6,000 towards insulating your attic along with the refrigerator and the light bulbs. So for those that are struggling to pay their electric or their heating bills, call us up. The toll-free number I mentioned earlier, 1-800-692-2626. and we can set you up for that REAP visit or a home energy assessment.
What about smart thermostats?
Yeah.
Like my house is complicated. The people who built, improved it, whatever.
Yeah.
We actually have a couple of thermostats. We're not even really sure what they work for. All right.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Are there people who actually will put in a smart thermostat?
Yeah, there are.
I mean, it looks like it shouldn't be that hard,
Right.
but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, there are contractors. Usually it's the same ones that the home comfort partners, the ones that put in heat pumps. They'll usually install a smart thermostat, for you if you want. It could be pricey because the labor, even though it's a simple thing, just getting a contractor to your home, it's going to cost something to get them there. But HVAC stands for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. For those that don't know that acronym, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning contractors are the ones that are most skilled with being able to install a thermostat. And if you have multiple thermostats in your home, it's typically because you have more than one heating system or more than one zone on your heating system. So you might have an upstairs second floor zone and a first floor and maybe even a third zone. And there's things called zone valves if you have a boiler, and on boiler systems it's a zone valve which opens and closes the heating system. If it's a ducted system, it's usually two separate units, an air conditioner for one floor and the other. But yeah, smart thermostats, they're very important because by setting the heat down in the wintertime and at nighttime when you're not there, or when you're sleeping, or when you're not home, it does save energy. Some people say, well, it's going to cost just as much to reheat, but it does save energy by setting back thermostats. And they do it automatically if you have a smart thermostat. And the other program I'll mention a little bit. So we give rebates for smart thermostats. If you buy a Nest, Google Nest, or another type.
What's it called?
We give
Google Nest.
Google Nest, Nest. We have an online marketplace, and we sell thermostats that normally retail for over $100 for, depending on the time, there's usually specials certain times a year for less than $50, sometimes as low as $10 for a smart thermostat. So you can check on our online marketplace, which is on our website, and we discount smart thermostats. And the other thing we do, if customers are willing to let us control those thermostats on a hot summer day for a couple of hours, we give a customer $85 to join the program. It's called Smart Savers. And you can get an $85 upfront payment for allowing us during, critical time. That we do this when there's a system need. If the electric demand is very high on the electric grid, we can control thermostats and change the setting of your temperature remotely. We're not going into your home. We have a Wi-Fi connection, and we can control your thermostat. And you can always override. If you're not comfortable, you can always override it. But it helps support the electric grid, and it gets you $85 of payment to you.
I got one other one here about product. Advanced Power Strips Tier 1.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Oh.
It's basically everyone knows what a power strip, right? It's
Right.
a cord with about 6 plugs in it. Advanced power strips are a way to reduce the energy of the devices that they're plugged into. So what it'll typically do is, if you have a computer and a printer, as by way of example, you plug your computer and you plug your printer in, it'll automatically leave that printer in the off mode unless your computer's on. So why waste, otherwise printers sometimes use energy just to stand by. The advanced power strip will turn them off. Same with TVs. If you have ancillary devices on your TV, they don't save a lot of energy, but it's some of what some people call phantom energy because it's just sitting there all day, being ready. And an advanced power strip can save small amounts of energy just for some of the plug-in.
Yes, my cousin, I'm laughing thinking about this because he was like always just every day he would just unplug everything. So he'd go before work, the Keurig machine's going out. He was like, but it was like laughing because he was always talking about phantom energy.
Small amounts of
But I do think these are probably situations that it seems small, but can add up.
Every little bit
right?
helps.
Like how do you know?
Yeah, but that's what that does.
Yeah.
It controls the use of devices that are just sitting there and standby, and it turns them off.
So it really can't measure what it would save.
No,
Kind
not
of
precisely.
minimal amount of
It's.
money.
I know it's relatively small,
Right.
compared to the other things like water heating and heating systems and
Right.
air conditioning. It's a small amount of energy, but every little bit does help.
Back to the light bulb thing,
Yeah.
things about switching over. Are all devices, that, like, let's say I have a ceiling fan that has the incandescent light bulb, and I want to switch over. Can that same device automatically use LED light bulbs?
Yeah, that's a great question. LED light bulbs, the screw and threads are identical. So they come in different sizes and shapes. Some incandescent bulbs have a slightly more skinny screw thread, and the LEDs have the same. So they're designed to be compatible. They're dimmable. Most LEDs now you can buy a dimmable. So if you have a dining room with a dimmer switch and you like the incandescent bulbs because they can dim way down, you can dim LED bulbs as well. So,
because I think that's a huge hesitation a lot of times, that people now think like, oh my God, now I have to change my entire device, or like got to get rid of my lamp that I've had for 50 years that I love.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't realize light bulbs are as complicated as they are.
Well, that's why I brought up, because I'm telling you, I'll be in a store and I'll be like,
is this gonna work?
And there's a wall full.
Yeah.
Well,
and you pointed out the threads are the same.
Yeah, threads are the same.
Are they always the same, or are there different kinds of threads?
There's only two that I'm aware of. Generally there's the skinny candelabra type bulbs that are more, and then there's a standard, we call them A lamps. There's a standard bulb, and the threads are the same. The other reason there's so many to choose from, there's color rendering index, which is a little, and color temperature. So that's another difference. Incandescent bulbs are all the same. But with fluorescent and LED primarily, which we're talking about today, there's a color temperature, and the higher the color temperature, the whiter the bulb. So that's
I'm a warm white girl.
Yeah, so I'm a warm white.
I tend to go in a warm.
But I remember as a kid, I mean, there was like your name, GE,
right,
light bulbs.
Light bulb, that was it.
Like this kind and this kind and that kind.
Right, now
that was the end of it.
Yeah,
one is 60 watts.
Now you could do a whole light show, right? But guys, we're gonna have to take another break, and after the break, we will continue talking with Mike Voltz, who is the Director of Energy Efficiency over at PSEG Long Island. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio.
Take WCWP with you wherever you go with the WCWP app. Listen live 24/7 to all of our streams, all from one app. Plus, call the studios directly from the app and visit our social media. Download the app through the iOS App Store on Apple devices or the Google Play Store on Android by searching WCWP Radio, or visit WCWP.org for links. The WCWP app, available now on iOS and Android devices.
We are back with Mike Voltz, the Director of Energy Efficiency, PSEG Long Island. We're talking all things of energy efficiency, light bulbs, how to save money. I think anybody wants to hear.
I have one topic.
Yes, go ahead, my friend. Oh.
Mike has a big claim to fame in that he threw out the first ball at a Long Island duck game.
So we were talking about ducks, and then you thought about the other ducks. Yes.
Yes, I'm proud to say.
He was solarly paneled while doing it.
Yes. Because people take for granted. I played a lot of baseball, and I still do a lot of shoulder stuff because I golf. But people take for granted throwing. If you haven't thrown for a long time, you're lucky you can reach the wall.
Yeah, it was more of a challenge because the mound on a baseball
warm up.
The mound on a baseball field is 60 feet 6 inches from home plate, and I will admit I threw it from about 55 feet.
That's right. There you go.
It was no problem.
That's okay. Right? It's an adjustment.
Time baseball players come back.
Yeah, and they can't reach
home plate.
It's true.
And it's you wouldn't think that could happen.
The body doesn't work as well when you're my age.
Now that has nothing to do with electricity.
I like it. It's like a fun little fact, though, Otto. I like that thrown in there. So back to just ways to save money. We're approaching summer. So is there any kind of little things that you can do around the house around the summertime to kind of keep your costs down? Because I know we're all there. All of a sudden you'll see, especially you're on balance billing, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what just happened? Like after the summer from all the usage going on.
Yeah, that's a great point. The summertime is generally most people's bills because of air conditioning primarily, but also swimming pools. Not everyone has a pool, but those homeowners who have a swimming pool, you're running that pool pump many, many hours every day. So the first thing I would say is make sure you have all LED lights because it's so efficient, they're inexpensive. So change all your light bulbs to LED. Air conditioning and heating, I mentioned, were the biggest users. If you have a relatively newer air conditioning, control the thermostat so that you're comfortable, but not overly. You don't need to make it an icebox, right? You don't need to run your air conditioner 24/7 at 68 degrees.
So you're sitting there with a jacket on.
Yeah, right. You don't want to be cold with a sweater in the summer. So, you can keep the temperature probably in the mid to upper 70s. We recommend around 78 degrees to be more efficient. Some people might want to be a little cooler. The other thing, we have a new program we're rolling out to most residential customers is called time of day rate pricing. Basically, what it means is there's a discount on the electric rate for 20 hours a day, but there's a premium for 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And the reason for this is, I mentioned earlier all about, the electric grid and power plants. It costs us more to produce energy and to distribute energy to our customers when the peak demand is highest, right? Like when you go to a movie theater or a restaurant, there's peak pricing during times when there's high demand. Well, on a hot summer afternoon when it's 95 degrees out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and everyone's got air conditioning pools, it's a stress on the electric grid. So what we've done with our rate design is between the hours of 3 to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, all year long, even though it's mostly a problem in the summer, all year long, just to make it simple for customers, all year long, there's a higher price for electricity during those 4 hours. But in return, there's 20 hours every day, plus every weekend where you have a discount price. So to your question about how customers might be able to save energy during the summer is, if you're on that pricing plan, which most of our residential customers are going to be on that pricing plan, is do anything that's discretionary. Don't go crazy and stop cooking because you don't want to eat at 6 o'clock. But dishwashers, laundry, washing machines, clothes dryers, and dishwashers, and pool pumps. Right, you can set your pool pump on a timer so that it doesn't operate during those 3 to 7 p.m. Run it in the morning, till 3 o'clock. Run it in the evening to keep the pool clean. Run your appliances and your dishwashers after 8 p.m. at night. Shouldn't be a problem for most, or early in the morning. And that'll save you some money as well.
There's a geothermal form of, it's like a heat pump, but it's different.
Yes.
And how is it different?
Yeah, I actually have that in my house, so I can describe it. Geothermal heat pump is the same principle. It moves, a heat pump I mentioned earlier, moves heat from outside to inside in the winter. And in the summer, it takes heat out of your house and extracts it and sends it out into the air in a big square box, and it rejects the heat. What a geothermal heat pump does is instead of rejecting it to the air, it sends that heat in the summertime when you want to cool your home. It sends the heat down into a well about 200 feet deep in your ground. So you drill wells and you put a small plastic piping into the ground, and you're basically exchanging heat. The year-round on Long Island, the ground temperature is about 55 degrees all year long. So in the summertime, it's very easy to cool your home, using the ground. And in the wintertime, using a refrigerant that you can send down into the ground, you can heat your home with the geothermal heat pump as well. So it's very efficient, but it's a more expensive upfront cost. So I wouldn't recommend it for all customers. It's a premium product. It's an expensive product to install. But once you have the geothermal heat pump, if you choose to, and there's contractors on our website that can install the geothermal heat pump, it operates very efficiently.
Sitting here talking about electricity. To me, and I'm technically okay. I sold computers back in 1969 with paper tape.
Those were big computers.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But electricity, I remember as a kid, it was like a mystery to me. Like, where were all these radio things flying through the air? And then TV, and now
it's still a mystery to me, Otto.
See, visible. Like Bluetooth or whatever.
Yeah,
we probably couldn't see each other.
Right, it'd be a big fog.
And those are like mysteries to me. And electricity falls right in there. Okay. So we take it for granted. Electricity comes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you're going to store extra electricity power that you create with solar.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What do you do with that? Do you put it like in a box or like, is it like visible? Do you have this electricity in a little ball?
Can't see it, but it's there. Well,
I think most people find electricity a mystery.
Yeah, that's probably true. And there's also AC and DC, and people say, well, what's the difference? We sell PSEG Long Island, and all electric utilities use AC, alternating current.
Right.
So it changes positive to negative 60 times every second. Very, very rapidly. Whereas DC, which comes out of a battery, is not oscillating at all. It's just a steady stream. So you've got AC and DC electricity, but very interesting.
And I was like, and here I just thought AC/DC was a band.
Very good.
Well, the other one we hear about a lot nowadays are electric cars.
Right.
And I'm assuming that your
PSEG Long Island
involved with that.
We do,
world.
Yeah.
From what perspective?
So PSEG Long Island supports clean energy, as I mentioned earlier, right? And New York State, there's a law in New York State called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It was passed in 2019, so it's about 6 years now. And it requires utilities around the state and customers around the state to gradually, over time, get away from fossil fuels, whether it's burning oil or natural gas. And right now, a lot of our electricity is generated with natural gas in power plants, et cetera. And our cars that we drive are mostly gasoline and some diesel. So what New York State would like to see, and PSEG Long Island supports this, is for purposes of clean air, right? Instead of having tailpipe emissions from your car, with an electric vehicle, there's zero emissions. It's a zero emission vehicle. So they're also very efficient. They cost less to operate. Once you own an electric vehicle, your per mile cost to drive is less expensive than putting gasoline in a car. So PSEG Long Island supports customers that want to choose driving an electric vehicle. And mainly we support it with the infrastructure, because when you own an electric vehicle, now you've got to charge
it, right?
Right? So we support it. We have a rebate, which right now is $400. I'm trying to remember the number, $200 right now for homeowners, unless you're income eligible, then it's $300. But $200 to put what's called a level 2 charger in your home. Level 2 is a 240 volt charger. So if you buy an electric vehicle on Long Island and you want to charge it at home, some vehicles can charge with a 110 volt outlet, but it takes longer. With a 240 volt outlet, you can charge your vehicle overnight. It'll be fully charged in about 6 to 8 hours. So we encourage home charging. We also have public charging. So if you want to drive to the shopping mall or to a restaurant and you want to say, well, I'm going to charge my car while I'm in having dinner, we support infrastructure. We pay developers of public charging stations to put in public charging for people.
Now, the home charging, this is making a big assumption that you have a nice driveway that you can put the car in.
Right.
What would, like typically, okay, now I have this charger and I have an electric car and I drive 10,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
All right. How much electricity, what's my cost roughly for electricity for those 10,000 miles?
I think the number was about 6 cents a mile.
6 cents a mile?
Yeah, it's about 6 cents a mile to, depending on the vehicle, because if it's a small vehicle, it's more efficient. Larger vehicles use more electricity, just like it would with gasoline. But right now, there's about 75,000 electric vehicles on Long Island, and it's growing by about 10 to 20,000 new electric vehicles per year. But it costs about 5 or 6 cents a mile, which is less expensive than gasoline typically.
The two things I see, one, it's great if you have a driveway and you go back and forth and you can put it on, plug your car in every night.
Yeah.
If you live in an area where there's a lot of street parking, I could visualize a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's different. Electric vehicles might not be for everyone. Like you said, it's easier if you have a driveway, maybe a garage. Some of our apartment complexes are now putting in electric chargers for people that live in an apartment. So we're providing incentives to developers to put in infrastructure in apartment buildings. Also, we call it workplace charging. So some businesses, maybe you have 100 employees at your business and there's parking. We provide incentives for businesses to put workplace charging. So PSEG Long Island supports infrastructure to develop charging stations. And whether it's in your home where you can get $200 or where it's a large business where we pay sometimes $50,000 or $100,000 for a public charging, because these are big, more powerful chargers that can charge even faster than 8 hours. Some of the fast chargers can charge a car in 20 minutes, but they require a lot of power, and those are expensive to build. So PSEG Long Island provides incentives to developers to put in public chargers. So if you own an electric vehicle and you live where you said with street parking, you can stop at a public charging station, put in your credit card or your app on your phone and charge your vehicle there.
Yeah, I think what you said is it's not for everyone.
Not for everyone necessarily.
Right, because there are a lot of people who,
if it works for your lifestyle.
Yeah, if you drive from here to Richmond, Virginia all the time, it might not suit you because you have to stop and
and charge.
Maybe someday it'll be different.
Electric, like public electric chargers, like does it matter what type it is, or let's say for example, Tesla, and you say it all the time.
Right.
Can that charge something else other than a Tesla? Or is
now it can. That's a great question. So when Tesla first came out with their superchargers, it was an exclusive club. You had to be a Tesla owner,
I wanted to go ahead off on it.
Only Tesla drivers can drive here. About 2 years ago, Tesla had a deal with Ford, and now they've done it with. There's adapters now. So
okay.
But so it's kind of like the VCR, different technology, but they have adapters now. So you can use a Ford or a GM,
Gotcha.
but you have to have an adapter before you
To do
plug
it.
it in. But they are compatible
Yeah.
now.
I mean, it's like going to a gas station. If you had to have a different pump,
Oh, yeah, it'd be a challenge.
Because like I very
True.
often will see, and I'm like, can anyone else charge their car here, or do you have to have a Tesla to do this? And I've
Yeah.
like wondered that.
Good
I mean,
question.
I know.
It just changed recently.
where one of the shopping areas where I live in New Hyde Park, there's a charging station
Yeah.
in there, and I never see anybody using it.
Not used though. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's, as I said, there's 75,000 vehicles on Long Island, and I think the infrastructure that we're building out is designed so that we could have 300, 400,000. We want to get a little bit ahead with the infrastructure because it's a chicken and an egg in a way, because some folks won't buy an electric vehicle if they don't feel there's going to be enough places to charge. So PSEG Long Island is building out the infrastructure to give people confidence that if they buy an EV, they can stop at the shopping mall and charge it. Yeah.
I mean, basically, you're increasing business when people use an electric car, to be blunt
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. But it's
At
interesting. I
the same
mentioned
token, you're removing the fossil fuel
gasoline.
part of it.
Yeah.
So it's a plus in two directions.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to my talk about time of day rates too, though, because when you ask me how much it costs per mile, we have a 40%, we have a super off-peak rate that we offer as a voluntary rate, and that offers a 40% discount between 11 at night and 6 in the morning. And that's ideal for electric vehicle owners because you can get a 40% discount on your cost of electricity while you're charging overnight. And then you get up in the morning, your car's fully charged. So maybe 6 cents a mile now becomes 4 cents a mile if you charge on a discount overnight rate. So for those 75,000 or so customers out there who have an electric vehicle and those that might think about buying one, the super off-peak discount rate is probably for
Now,
you.
would that also vary like with cars? You get your miles per gallon,
Yeah.
right? This car gives you this car gives you that. Would that vary from car to car?
It definitely does. The size of the vehicle, the size of the battery, the weight of the vehicle is the biggest issue. And it even varies. One of the differences between a gasoline vehicle and an electric vehicle is the heating, right? In the wintertime, you want to be warm. A gasoline engine throws off waste heat, and you can turn the heat. It doesn't matter. You don't lose mileage by turning on your heat in the winter. With an electric vehicle, it does, because you're using electric heating elements to either warm your seat or warm your hands on, so it does vary by the size of the vehicle and the outdoor temperature. If you're using a lot of heat or air conditioning, you lose some mileage on your electric vehicle. I call it mileage, but it's,
I mean,
the
it's
miles per
same
kilowatt hour,
idea.
same thing.
Yeah.
How many kilowatt hours does it take to move your vehicle? And it depends on all those things.
You mentioned another magic word there, battery.
Yeah.
You hear all kinds of stories, it costs $10,000 to replace a battery.
Yeah.
We all know that lithium batteries, there's a big to-do going on out here about where do you store them. They can be dangerous. What's your view of that? The batteries.
So the auto manufacturers, reputable automobile manufacturers are using very high quality, safe batteries in their vehicles. I think most of the fires that we hear about, the fires, buildings burning down and things, is like the e-bikes and the, imported, probably don't have UL listing, so I think lithium ion batteries as a technology are generally safe. I'm not an expert on batteries, but they're generally safe, and the auto manufacturers are using very high quality. So I don't think that would be a concern in terms of the safety of the battery.
Right. Okay. But the replacement.
And the replacement is expensive, as you said. So it's probably going to last 10 years. Most of the life of the car. I mean, some people might keep their car more than 10 years, and at some point you may need to replace the battery. They do lose some of their life over time. They don't go totally dead, but you might have a battery that stores X number of kilowatt hours, and after 5 or 6 years, it might store a little bit less. You lose some ability, relatively small percentages over time.
My view is that we're kind of in the Daniel Boone stage of electric vehicles, if you think about it.
Yeah, hopefully it's a little more advanced than Daniel Boone, but I agree with you that it's still evolving. It's still evolving.
We're not going to be here, but I won't be. But 50 years from now, you sit here and you talk about electric vehicles.
Yeah.
It'll be much different
Yes.
than now.
That's probably true. The
So
technology.
looking back 50 years back from 50 years ahead, it's going to be pretty archaic.
Yeah, the batteries the performance of the batteries is getting better. So the amount you can store per weight or per space is getting better.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm hoping there's flying cars by then, Otto. I'm still just waiting.
Watch the jet.
Yeah.
There are Jetsons.
I thought we would have had that by
With
now.
no people.
Yeah, right.
Flying all around.
Self-driving cars are here now, pretty much.
Yes.
Right?
That's
Tesla has
another one that,
self-driving cars.
you know,
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
You,
Yeah.
you program it where you want it to take you, and it can take you there.
And I've had my friends have used it. A lot of my friends swear by because it's always a debate amongst our friends.
Right.
Because it's like it's a
Can you
scary thought.
tailgate or can you speed with those?
I don't think so because I think they're your.
And I mean, I don't want one of those.
Very, very interesting. So I just want to remind people, if you want to get any of this information, you would call 1-800-692-2626.
That's correct.
That's
yeah.
for any of these questions.
Yeah, we call that our energy efficiency hotline. So any questions about your energy efficiency, homes and businesses as well. I know we talked exclusively about homes, but if you own a business and you want to, upgrade the lighting in your business, actually, this is the last year I mentioned LED lighting, right, for homes. They have LED lighting that are shaped like tubes too, 4-foot long tubes, not just bulbs. And we offer generous incentives for businesses to replace their old fluorescent tubes. And those incentives are going to end at the end of this year.
Oh,
so it is important if businesses want to replace their tubular or even any LED light, incandescent or fluorescent bulbs, do it this year.
In a total picture, does residential or business use more electricity on Long Island?
I think it's pretty close, but
Yeah.
I think homeowners is a little bit, we're a bedroom community more.
Yeah.
I think we have a little more sales of electricity to homes than businesses.
Yeah.
Well, we had such an informative segment. I want to thank Mike Voltz, who clearly you keep up to your namesake. You really knew everything about energy efficiency. He's the director of energy efficiency over at PSEG Long Island. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us. You're listening to Project Independence in You on LIU Public Radio. Thank you so much, Mike.